Okay, so we put out a tweet the other day looking for funny, just funny incidents that happened on the field throughout your GAA career or stuff you would have seen. So just to run through a few of them. You actually started off, Mr. Verney, replying to Niall Morrissey saying, basically Niall Morrissey riding the bull for UCC is one of the greats. You've started off with a bit of confusion there. So was this actually a good story, a bad story, an indifferent story? You're going to have to let us in on that one.
This is one of my favourite stories, I have to say. So Niall Morrissey from Dixborough in Kilkenny, great character. Actually does a bit of acting now. I think he's out in either Abu Dhabi or Dubai teaching. But he was in UCC and they were playing UL in for what was it, Junior Colleges All Ireland final. Not unbelievably serious, but an All Ireland final all the same, serious enough. Now this lad was seriously talented. He was on all the dead balls for UCC, and he was taking the frees, and I think he like every time he took a free, he'd put it over the bar, and he'd start riding the hurl like that and coming out like he was riding a bull. And I literally thought it was the funniest thing ever. He got 7 frees, so he did it 7 times. But the coup de grace was going to be that if he got a goal, Darren Mulcahy, who's Tomas's son and was involved in the team, Morrow, he's called, was going to go over to Darren Mulcahy, hold the hurl up like that, and Darren Mulcahy was going to drop dead on the ground. Like, this is some level of detail to be going into for a hurling match, like, with regards to celebrations and that. But I literally, genuinely, I never laughed as much at a match as I did. Like, it was serious enough. There was a couple of hundred people there, and Morrow was going around riding the Bronco, like, every time he got a score. It was ridiculous.
He sounds like that Boo Weekly lad from the Ryder Cup team, I think, with America. We'll move on to the next one here. So, Harry Roberts, who was my manager with Coola before and a selector, the sign on the bridge at Killaloe after Clare beat Tip in the All-Ireland final. It only takes one sparrow to bait 15 finches. For anyone who doesn't remember, that's a reference to the fact that Tipperary had finches on the jersey. I'll move on to the next one then. Actually, Harry again. Mick Holden met Richie Connor at Leinster train and said Dublin bollocks gone to Division 2, they'll never get out of it. Richie said Offaly had no problem getting out of Division 2 as they're in Division 3 now. Harry, I'm afraid that's not the funniest one you've ever come out with. You are a gas character, but I'm going to give you the thumbs down for that one. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a thumbs down.
Next one, so Tan 97. Lucknan refusing to turn the bus and taking a lock gate off the hinges at the back of the West Country. Anthony Daly replies, down the hotel in Shannon, I think. And Tan 97 replied again, this continued for the night. Got back to his flat, crashed, and woke up the following day still raging. Dragged his arse down the shop to buy some breakfast stuff, and the paper headline, Baker earns his crust. First he knew Clare had won was on the Monday. Could do with a couple of extra apostrophes and full stops in the middle of that. I'm a little bit lost on that one, but we'll take it all the same. Actually, do you have any own from your own career of playing?
It's funny, the best stories are nearly always involved with someone else. The 2 stories come to mind. A fella from Burr by the name of Red Cooney, great old character. One story is, I think we were playing under 16 football at Burr down in Killorn, and I don't know what, the Red got this fucking idea where he was going to put a load of D-peat on his legs, and he thought he was a great lad, so he's put a load of D-peat in his legs, and his legs were grand and warm. I looked up the far end. Red was playing corner forward after about 5 minutes. He was rolling around on the ground trying to cool off. And the second story about him is, I actually didn't know it was about him. I mentioned it in a previous show, and he said it was him. But there was a story. I remember hearing a story about a team starting a league match with 15, and one fella was going that bad that he was taken off at half time. And it definitely happened somewhere else, but Red got on to me after and said, the one about me getting taken off and playing the rest of the first half with 14, it was me in an under 16 league game in Shinrone. I was full back, fell out over the first 3 or 4 balls, and my man had 1-1 scored. And the manager, Dinger Walsh, lifted me, and we'd no subs. He says, get in there and sit down, we're better off without you.
That is ignorance at the highest level. I remember one time, I think it was around 2012, we were going playing a challenge match against Oulart Bala down in Oulart. Martin Story was over the team at the time, so we were all, trying to make a big burst for this particular season. Actually, Harry Roberts, who I mentioned, was over the team at the time, so everyone was to show up for a bus at whatever it was, 9 a.m, because we were up good and early to get down to Wexford. One of the lads, he'd ended up going out on the beer all night long, and he came in and he thought he had himself. You know the way you'd show up the odd time to a training session, worse for wear. I mean, you don't drink, but you'd have lads showing up worse for wear, but they try to pretend they're grand. Like I'm sure you've.
Yeah, loads of times. Yeah, loads of times.
So this lad Barry, he showed up and he was trying to play it as if he was grand, but it had been Paddy's Day the day before, and he showed up thinking he was grand, not realising he still had an Irish flag painted on his face. Absolute clown. We went down anyway. We were on the bus on the way down. One of the lads had taken Harry's iPad and he started messaging some of the players. So he took Harry's iPad, it was logged into Facebook, and he replied to one of the lads saying, did you try to call me last night? Sorry, I was in the saddle. This sort of stuff. So you have all sorts of messing going on.
Just on that, there's always good stories involving beer. I remember there was a league game in Burr 2 or 3 years ago, I'd say, and one of the elder statesmen, I won't mention his name, he was basically out the whole of the previous night. The game was on at maybe 11 that morning, and he'd been out drinking since 9 o'clock and hadn't been to bed. We were short numbers. You know the way when you're short numbers, you might only have 13, but you ring maybe 7 or 8 lads, and you end up with 17, having thought you only had 13. So this lad ended up being togged out. They didn't start him, but he was just standing on the sideline the whole way during the game, with the shorts, jersey, and he had the helmet on and the hurl folded, just ready to go, just standing on the sideline. And like, so he didn't have a clue what was going on. The smell of beer off him. It's just that he was getting so into the game and shouting and being so enthusiastic, and had no idea that like everyone realised he was absolutely pasted on the sideline.
These things happen. I remember playing, some of my more calamitous stuff was with playing soccer down home for Borrislee, because showing up for the hurling, you generally take it really seriously. The soccer, you can kind of show up and just play it by ear. One night, probably out till 4 or 5 in the morning, and I was definitely fully cut playing the match, and I remember trying to header the ball early on in the game and just being all over the shop, and then midway through the first half, I had to go over to the sideline, stick my fingers down my throat and get sick Bacardi Breezer or Smirnoff Ice all over the place, whatever embarrassing drink I had. Started actually at half time, I was down on my hands and knees trying to make myself go 6 or more. Started the second half, I passed the ball up the field to whoever was striker. He looked for a return ball, and I was just like, and then eventually I had to go and get it. I just kicked the ball away and turned around and went, nah, no thanks, not for me.
Just 2 quick stories on that I'm after thinking of. One is he wasn't drunk or anything at the time, but there's a fella playing underage hurling with Burr. John Corrigan was his name. He was playing midfield, and we turned around at half time or whatever, started the second half. But John forgot that you switch goals in the second half. So he got the first ball and put it out over his own bar. And then the second one is when
sorry, just to jump in, we had a lad who did that for the second team a couple of years ago. Started out this Davy Ryan is his name, the goat. He started out the second half and just went on a barnstorm and run in the wrong direction. Unbelievable stuff.
I actually did something similar in a match. I got a ball full back, and I kind of got away from the full forward, and I didn't realise the whistle was after being blown. I was after running, I'd say 100 yards in splendid isolation as fast as I possibly could. Got to maybe the far 45 and kind of just stopped, and sure the whole place had stopped. But just you mentioned about soccer. There was one story in Burr Town years ago. They only had maybe 10 players, something like that, and they were ringing lads to see if they'd come or whatever. And it was the day before mobile phones, something like that. So they rang one fella in Burr and rang the house phone, and they eventually got him or whatever, and said, "Can you come up and play soccer? We're stuck for someone." He says, "Oh no, I'm in Tullamore." And the boys are like, "What do you mean you're in Tullamore? So we're after ringing you on the house phone." "Oh, should we have a cordless telephone?"
Jeez, you've some brain surgeons around your neck of the woods. I'll give you that.
At least the one positive is at least you get a few funny stories out with the parents.
That's true. I was actually thinking of this guy who, most parishes would have a parish league, but there was this lad, Ty Carroll, he was maybe 10 years of age, under 14, and he was in the middle of the Gaelic football parish league. Sure, he wasn't paying attention at one stage, just picked the ball up under his arm, ran off like it was rugby. Just ran off and beeped on the whistle. Where are you going, young lad? Just moving on then to the next tweet. So Killian Whelan, he tweeted in that my cousin was an inter-county referee, and I was part of his umpire team. I would often travel with him to games when he was a sideline official. On our way to Kilmallock for Limerick versus Armagh around 0102, he got a call that the other appointed linesman couldn't make it. After trying some officials in the vicinity with no luck, I ended up running the line in some of my cousin's spare gear and boots borrowed from the ref. Some crack under Joe Kernan's gaze for the first half. Yeah, I'd have a bit of time for that story. That's not bad. I'll jump on to the next one then. I'm sort of picking these willy-nilly, so I haven't exactly ran through them all. So Eamon McGee covering Tip versus Watford in Semple Stadium some years back. Cathal Barrett flicked the ball away from a Dacia player and caught me square in the face on the sideline. Broke the glasses, but the Nikon survived and Tip won. And Cathal Barrett accused Paddy Stapleton of being that man. And one final one then. Cathal McFarlane, or Mackerlane tweeted, playing backs and forwards, an unnamed injured player at Owen Rua Club was given a bag of balls, asked to go out and hit the ball into the forwards. 1 minute later, said player is baiting 30 balls into the trees. What the F are you doing? You said bait the balls into the forest instead of forwards. So yeah, that's pretty embarrassing, you'd have to say, wouldn't you?
You would indeed. There was actually at Women's Hurling got onto me on Twitter with a story. Just said in the 90s, my brother was in Mary I in UCC, and WIT played Fresher All Ireland there. So he was roped in to do umpire. Some of these great stories are always like when you're roped in to do something. So Neil Ronan was full forward for WIT and already a Cork senior. We all know him, obviously. He obviously knew his Cork opponent as it started right before the first throw in. Neil Ronan was talking to your man. He said, "First ball I get, I'm going to dummy left, turn right and throw it over the bar." Sure enough, the first ball comes in, Ronan collects, dummies left, turns right, point. Next ball that comes in, he said, "I'm going to dummy left, but stay going left, and go ahead for the black spot and stitch it." Next ball comes in, Ronan collects, dummies left, but continues his run one-on-one and stitches it. F's sake, lad, come on. I'm telling you exactly what I'm going to do here. What more can I do? Few minutes pass without any ball coming in. Next thing, fullback takes 2 steps back and absolutely peels Ronan. He's rolling around on the ground in agony, and your man turns around to him and said, fullback leans over and said, "Sorry, Neil, should have told you I was going to do that."
Yeah, well played. Have to appreciate that. One other thing I think was when I was, or my cousin was playing on the parish league team, Conor Keane, and over the team was another lad, David O'Connor, who was a bit older than him. I don't know, 7 or 8, 10 years older than him, whatever it is. So again, you're dealing with under 14s. Conor could have been 8, 9, 10, something like that. And David, who was a forward himself, was trying to explain to young Conor where to be. And imagine this, you're there trying to explain it to a really young lad. And the young lad, bit of a know-it-all vibe to him at the time, he goes, "I knows where to be floating around."
It's hard bet all those ones, like little kind of innocent ones. Well, like this, my favorite one is so simple, so short, and so I just think it's absolute dynamite. I might have said it before in a previous show, but I think Road were playing Clara in football, an Offaly football championship match, maybe 15 or 20 years ago or whatever, and there was a woman from Clara, and she was shouting for Road because she was originally from Road or whatever, and there was a couple of Clara people around her or whatever, and Road got a goal and she let to shout, and they were kind of looking at her, and she just looks back at them, "Stop lads, I was Road before I was married."
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, and then there's another one. There's another one after we were playing under 21 football with Forban. Borough were playing with them. The parish name was Weary, that was called, and we were playing St Michael's, which was Road, in an under 21A final. And St Michael's were going for 6 in a row or whatever, and we were a point up in injury time, and Niall Darby came up and kicked 2 points and won the match for Michael's, and it was we were absolutely devastated, and one of the fellas' mother was out in the field after, and we were devastated. It was the worst thing in the world, and she just goes, "Oh, I'd love to be Road."
Christ almighty, that club name has given glorious stories over the years, I'd imagine.
Uh,
I'm all out of stories now. I have a desperate memory, so I can't think of any more. So before we finish up, are you all out?
the only like F and Eddie Maroney is obviously like legendary. Like the amount of good stories that have come out of those videos, they're absolutely comical. The last one I remember is Paddy Corwin, a great character around Burr. He used to play for Burr and played with Offaly in '81. But Paddy came up to take a free for Burr in a county final. I think it was to win it. Not too sure who was against. Early '90s, and he was going to take the free or whatever, and someone asked how long was left, and Paddy, who kind of would talk out the side of his mouth like that sometimes, he just goes, "Another year if I get this," he says. That was the last puck of the game, and I think he put it over the bar, and that was that, and that was the end of it. But there's some great old yarns, and even I'm sure people will send in some other yarns once the video is done. But there's some great stories out there.
There certainly is. Yeah, so send us in any other stories, and don't make sure to bookmark our game.ie.